Ladies and gentlemen, can we get started, please? I'd like to call a joint meeting of the Rec and Ed and Ways and Means Committee to order. The purpose of the joint meeting is to hold a public hearing on the 2013-2014 operating budget for MCC. We will then proceed with the agenda items that have been assigned to both Rec and Ed and Ways and Means. When the Rec and Ed Committee's items are finished, that committee will adjourn and we will complete the Ways and Means Committee.
Would the clerk please call the roll for the Recreation Education Committee?
Mr. Barker is excused. Mrs. Draw? Here. Mr. Gamble is excused. Mr. Morelli? Here. Chairwoman Valerio?
Here.
And President Adair?
Here. Would the clerk please call the roll for the Ways and Means Committee?
Ms. Andrews? Here. Mr. Antelli? Mr. Baroth, Mr. Daniele, Mr. Haney, Mr. Hanna, Mr. Holland, Ms. Kaylee, Dr. Quattro, Mr. Tucciarello, Chairman Yolovich.
Here.
At this time, we will have a presentation by Dr. Ann Kress, President of Monroe Community College. Dr. Kress.
Thank you very much to the chairs of both committees, and thank you so much to the committee members for being here this evening for this budget hearing. Let me just start by saying that with this budget, MCC is continuing its history both of fiscal responsibility and stability, but also a commitment to academic excellence. But the reality is that we're continuing this tradition in a very changed higher education landscape. And so our ability to do so successfully really has relied on your continued investment in MCC, for which we are very, very grateful, but also on the college's commitment to both academic excellence, innovation, quality, but also, quite frankly, cost containment, and a real sharp eye on how we can do whatever we can do in order to manage our budget. We take our responsibility to Monroe County, to our students, to its residents, to its taxpayers very, very seriously. And I think that comes through in this year's budget as well. We recognize that it's never been more important for folks to be able to access higher education, post-secondary education, whether it's workforce training or the first 2 years of a four-year degree. But we also recognize that it's increasingly difficult for families to afford higher education. And so we've really placed an emphasis on that as well. That is our responsibility, quite frankly, as the county's community college, to keep that door of access open and accessible and affordable, but also to make sure that when students do walk through, on the other side, they find quality and programs that are aligned to assure that they achieve success, not just in the classroom or at the college, but also once they graduate and move forward. So the budget that I'm going to present to you this evening and answer any questions that you have about is really representing the efforts of so very many at the college to make sure that we have that continued commitment to academic excellence and also our responsibility to the taxpayers. So our success on these fronts is really made manifest by a recent independent economic impact study that shows that taxpayers are going to receive a rate of return of 7.9% on every dollar that they invest in MCC, and we do view those dollars as investments, and that when students invest a tuition dollar at MCC, they receive a cumulative $8.30 in future income, which is really over 18% in terms of a rate of return. So we feel very confident about the investment that we're returning for the investment in us. As we look at our budget, what we recognize is that demographics in the state, in the nation, are changing. And you see this across all of higher education. More and more colleges are seeing that there are fewer and fewer high school graduates for any number of reasons, the chief driver of which is quite frankly demography. There are just fewer 18 and 19-year-olds, especially in this part of New York. So we have made an intentional effort to target non-traditional students who we also recognize may not have the degree qualifications that they need to be successful in the economy. And that's one reason why we are projecting a year-on-year enrollment growth of about 1%. The student tuition for a full-time student is projected to be $3,240 once we receive your approval this evening and SUNY's approval later. This reflects an increase of $100 per full-time student. What I want to share with you is that with that tuition of $3,240 with fees, with books, is still accessible for the students with greatest need within the Pell Grant allotment that they would get, which is federal financial aid, and also TAP. And those are both grant aid, so that's not any loans. In fact, according to the U.S. Department of Education, the average MCC student is going to receive about $8,000 in grants and scholarships. So that would essentially cover their academic costs. Life costs, transportation costs, those may be additional, but again, it's well managed by most students. MCC will continue to have among the very lowest tuition of all the SUNY community colleges. We're actually second lowest in the state, and I will tell you within our region, we are by far the lowest priced SUNY community college. And we recognize that that's part of the obligation we have as well to our community to keep that door of access open. Part of the reason we're able to do that is because we did get what we expected, a nice partial restoration of some of the state aid that had declined so precipitously a couple years ago. So we did get $150 per FTE in restoration from the state, but in reality that still leaves us almost 10% below in terms of state aid where we were just in 2009. In recognition of the property tax cap that all counties are facing, but also in recognition that we are among many competing aims and many competing requests for the dollars at the county. We have managed the increase that we're asking for to $500,000. That's 2.7% over what we saw in the past, and it is in fact the same level as last year. Now that's $700,000 less than we asked for just a couple years ago. So it is flat year on year and less than it was in the past. With the approved bargaining unit contracts, labor expenses are going to grow a modest 1.8%, which is definitely much more modest than in previous years. But unfortunately driven by pension increases, which are set by New York State, and health care insurance increases, employee benefits grew much more dramatically by 8.9%. At this point, employee benefits are about 50% of our costs of labor. As you know, we've had discussions in the past around GASB 45, which is part of our obligation to our retired employees. And so we no longer fund that GASB 45 obligation after consultation with this body and other council. And we've also formally adopted an investment policy. The Board of Trustees has, again, following some of the guidance that the legislature has helped us with. So I guess what I'm telling you is this year as we come to you, what we're trying to do is to really send a collective message that we recognize the strength that we have as MCC in terms of helping to train the workforce of this region. And in fact, some of our most dramatic growth has come in our workforce programming. But the reality is the very programs that are most needed in this community are frequently the very most expensive to offer at the institution. And for that reason and others, we are requesting this evening an additional $500,000 from the county. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Kress this time? Mr. Haney? No? Oh. Okay. Oh, it's right, you're not Rec and Ed. That's right. Okay, so.
Go ahead, Mary.
All right.
The public hearing.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of Monroe Community College's 2013-2014 operating budget.
Affidavits of publication and posting of the notice of the hearing in the Daily Record and Rochester Business Journal have been received and are on file in the clerk's office.
Is there anyone signed up to speak regarding the public hearing on the MCC budget?
There is not.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak regarding the MCC budget? Okay, there being none, I declare the public hearing closed.
just recommend so far.
Okay.
Ms. Rossi, are there any speakers to address either committee this evening?
There is not.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not signed up that wishes to speak to this committee? Hearing none, I declare the public forum closed.
All right, members of the Recreation and Education Committee, you have the minutes from the June 25th, 2013 meeting. They will stand approved as submitted unless there are any corrections.
Members of the Ways and Means Committee, you have the minutes from the June 26, 2013 meeting. They will stand approved unless there's any changes by the end of business today.
Okay. We will now move on to new business. Please note the asterisk and the italicized print in your agenda for action by both committees. Mrs. Rousey, please read the items to be considered by both committees.
Referral 13-205, approval of Monroe Community College's 2013-2014
Okay.
operating budget.
Moved by Mrs. Draw, seconded by President Adair. Is there any discussion? Any questions from the members of the Recreation and Education Committee at this time?
And now for the Ways and Means Committee. The item is moved by Legislator Howland, second by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Now's the time, Paul.
Wait. Let's just a vote first.
I'm sorry.
I think I was supposed to guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have four questions.
Hold on. We did make a mistake here.
They were supposed to
They
vote.
need to vote on their part of it first before it comes to Ways and Means.
So if there are no
I apologize.
questions from the Recreation Education Committee, all those in favor from the Recreation and Education Committee signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Now Ways and Means.
Now the motion is made by Legislator Howland, second by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have four questions through the chair. The first question is that according to your August 31, 2012 financial statements, that's the end of your last fiscal year, MCC at that point had a receivable of $1.3 million from the Sports Center Corporation, and I realize it was fully reserved. With the change of management at the Sports Corporation, have you been able to resolve that issue with them?
The chair, yes, we did. We did have a judgment against the owners of the Sports Center, the previous owners. That was settled for $500,000.
So through the chair, the judgment of $1.3 million was compromised at $500,000?
Correct. Through the chair, correct.
And have they paid you that?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. And related, are they currently current in they have ongoing rent payments too, I guess. Are they currently current in those payments?
Through the chair, yes, the new owners are current.
Okay, thank you. That's encouraging. Second question through the chair. Page 6 of the budget, and I'm looking at the summary that was presented to the legislature, indicates that the salaries and wages at the college are basically flat next year. But page 9 indicates that instructional salaries are dropping by almost $1 million, $963,000. Is the number of faculty at the college being decreased?
Through the chair, we recently successfully negotiated a new contract with the Faculty Association. Within the previous contract, there was a hard number of full-time faculty lines that we were to hold irrespective of actual enrollment of students. And what we were able to do through that faculty association negotiation was to move it to an indexed figure, where the number of full-time faculty would be indexed to the actual enrollment. Through the chair, having said that, I will say that currently, 60 to 65% of the sections at MCC are taught by full-time faculty. So one of the reasons why you see that salary line increase, however, was that part of the faculty negotiations was an increase in salary for faculty.
So it's $1 million decrease in instructional salaries through the chair. So are there going to be fewer full-time faculty next year than this past year?
Through the chair, yes, yes.
Do you know through the chair roughly how many reduction?
Through the chair, I'm not sure. I'm actually looking at our counsel who helped them negotiate the contract, and I think the index removed 16 lines. Is that correct? Through the chair, 16.
16?
16.
Okay.
Through the chair, the other thing I would note in terms of instructional salaries, and it's sort of one of those under the cover things, is that we also experienced a number of retirements of full-time faculty who would be at the very top of their wage scale. And in that case, then when they're replaced, they're also not replaced at that level of salary. So what you're seeing is actually a combination of those two.
Through the chair, related to that, since your enrollment is basically going to be flat, with 16 fewer full-time faculty, I assume that means there's an increase in adjunct faculty?
Through the chair, because of enrollment, we haven't necessarily seen a dramatic increase in the number of part-time faculty. Our ratio of full-time to part-time faculty in terms of sections taught, which is typically the way that is presented, is still well within comfort range for us. It's probably 60 to 65%. The national average, I should say, is much closer to 50% or below taught by full-time faculty.
Okay, thank you. Third question. Through the chair, now that you're the owner of the Kodak property, how much money is in the budget for the payment of real estate taxes and the provision of the heating and cooling services to Kodak?
Through the chair, at this point, there's no funding in the budget for that. We have not yet occupied that facility.
Through the chair, how will you be, I mean, since you bought them after the taxable status date, I assume you're going to owe the city taxes for the year 2013-14, as well as the county taxes for the year 2014. If they're not in the budget, how are you going to pay them?
Through the chair, we will be paying those out of contingency. Our existing contingency, it'll amount to about $300,000.
Okay. And is that about the amount of what the taxes will be? Is about $300,000? Is that?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. You're also, through the chair, obligated to provide steam and chilled water for the other members of the other participants in the State Street program. How is that budgeted in here, or is that going to, I mean, I assume there are costs of running the chiller facility and the steam operation, et cetera. Are they also going to be paid out of contingency, or are they budgeted?
Through the chair, during the negotiations, we settled an agreement with Kodak and Carestream, and the offsets that we'll be charging back to them, or the amount we'll be charging back to them through the chair will offset the actual cost to MCC. So it'll be, through the chair, no additional cost from our budget.
So there'll be no additional net costs. Do you have to somehow budget the gross costs and the revenue connected with that, or through the chair?
Through the chair, it's not in the budget, since we settled the sale after we defined the budget, but the offsets will cover those costs.
Okay. And the last question, obviously I was pleased to note last fall that the college adopted, I guess it was in the fall, late summer or fall, an investment policy. Has the college implemented that? I know as of August 31st last year, you had not implemented it. Has the college subsequently implemented the investment policy?
Through the chair, yes, we have.
And through the chair, might I inquire what you've done?
Through the chair, definitely. We have certainly sought financial advice, and through the chair, one of the things that we have learned is that we're actually earning more right now on the balances of our more liquid investments. We're earning 75 basis points on those balances versus what we would get about 20 basis points in money market. So we have not moved in that direction, and I will tell you that the advisors that we're working with at this point have suggested deferring any investments in U.S. Treasuries. So we're in the status quo position right now, but we're actually earning more on our reserves, our cash reserves, than we would have if we had invested them.
Through the chair, are these financial advisors perhaps associated with Chase and manufacturers, M&T?
Through the chair, no, they are not. This is PF&M out of New Jersey.
And they're recommending that the 75 basis points that you can make in the checking accounts is the best you could do?
Through the chair, the actual return is only one of the parameters. In fact, it's probably the last parameter we're looking at, given the aspect that we have of a publicly funded institution. So we do have an entire framework for assessing investments as part of the investment policy. And within that framework, through the chair, yes, that is the advice.
I guess I would end by just saying that I remain baffled by the fact that you had $57 million as of last August. I don't know what you have today. And of the $57 million, the great bulk of that was in the checking accounts. With 10-year Treasury notes today yielding 2.5%, which is 250 basis points, I am just baffled by the conclusion that you shouldn't be investing. I mean, it just, there's got to be some portion of that $57 million that you don't need for current cash flow, and I have to admit that I'm just baffled by the fact that you don't invest it. I mean, it's nice that you adopted a policy, but if you haven't implemented it at all.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I have a quick question. Why is MCC not tax exempt in the city?
Through the chair, we are a tax-exempt entity, but when you exchange property during the year, even if you're tax-exempt, you are liable for some tax burden.
Thank you.
Status date in the city, I think, is February 1st, if I recall correctly.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you, Ms. President Kress. You're up.
Madam Clerk?
224.
Okay. Referral 13-224, authorized contracts with Holdsworth Kolominski.
All right, moved by Legislator Draw, seconded by President Adair. At this time, are there any questions from the members of the Recreation and Education Committee? Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a quick question to the administration. Why was it that 4 of the general construction bids were rejected as non-responsive?
Through the chair, Jason Kennedy with Environmental Services Engineering Facilities Group. 4 of the firms, namely Whitney, BIG, and Pacone, were deemed non-responsive bidders on the general construction contract because they failed to submit a revised proposal form that was issued by addendum. So basically, they acknowledged receipt of the revised form in the way of an addendum, but then they submitted their bid on the original form, rendering them non-responsive.
Thank you. And another question. What were the engineers' estimates for this project?
Through the chair, the engineering estimate for the respective contracts, beginning with the general construction contract, was $4 million. There's base bid, alternate bid. So I'll give you the combined base bid plus each of the 4 alternates. Grand total estimate for general construction was $5,191,469. The combined base and alternate grand total bid for contract 2 mechanical construction was $1,673,298. The combined total bid for the plumbing and fire protection contract was $502,418, and the combined total base plus alternate bid for electrical construction contract was $1,091,885.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Anyone opposed? Item carries.
Now from the Ways and Means Committee. The item is moved by Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The low bidders on the general construction contract and on the plumbing contract are entities that I don't recall, the names are unfamiliar to me, and I don't recall the county previously doing business with them. Are we certain that they're responsible bidders?
Through the chair, yes, we are.
Through the chair, are they established entities, or are they from out of town?
Through the chair, yes, they are.
They're both from out of town?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Madam Chair, Clerk?
Referral 13-235, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Office of Parks.
Moved by Moved by President Adair and seconded by Legislator Draw. Are there any questions from the members of the Recreation Education? Okay, Mrs. Draw.
Yep. Madam Chairwoman, I have a question for the administration through you. First of all, why is this a matter of importance? And then I see that there's a decrease in the funding of about $10,000, so you could maybe answer that as well. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will answer the first question. I know Mr. Pellet from the Parks Department can address the second one. This was submitted for consideration as a matter of importance because we had recently received the notification from the state of the grant award, and my understanding is that the snowmobile clubs had already provided these services during the previous season, and so this is a reimbursement to them for services that they've already provided, and therefore we thought it was appropriate to try to expedite their reimbursement with these funds.
Through the chair, the answer to the second question, the projected funds are received from snowmobile registration fees, and the snowmobile office told us that those registration fees were down, and sometimes it fluctuates. This is one of the fluctuations that we've seen throughout the years.
Any further questions? Okay. In that case, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Now from the Ways and Means Committee. The item is moved by Legislator Daniele, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Are there any other matters to come before the Recreation and Education Committee? Okay, there being no other matters, the July 31st, 2013 meeting of the Recreation Education Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Recreation Education Committee is scheduled for Tuesday, August 20th at 5 p.m.
We will now continue with the rest of the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and at this time we have a presentation by Mr. Timothy White, who is a partner at KPMG, and Ms. Barbara Loveland, who is the senior manager of the firm. Would you please come forward? Thank you, Mary. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So, thank you. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present to the committee. What I want to remind everyone is that the presentation report that we're going to provide today is a verbal presentation. We've completed the audit of the county. The single audit has not yet been completed. It's in process. And upon the completion of that audit, the communications that I'll share today verbally will be provided in written form. One of the communication requirements we have is our responsibilities under professional standards. So the first item to express an opinion on the financial statements prepared by management and to opine on the presentation as being fairly and conform with U.S. GAAP. We also perform the audit in accordance with professional standards. That includes the AICPA requirements as well as governmental auditing standards. When we plan and perform the audit, it's done to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance with regard to the financial statements, that they are free from material misstatement caused by error or fraud. We have no responsibility to detect immaterial errors in the financial statements. As it pertains to internal controls, we do consider internal controls as it relates to the financial reporting process and planning our audit, but we do not render an opinion on the effectiveness of those internal controls. We have a responsibility to communicate to the county legislature significant matters related to the financial statement audits that are relevant, which are the communications that I'm sharing as part of this report. And as a result of the financial statement audit that has been completed, we did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. Significant accounting policies which are a required communication to the committee. The significant the significant accounting policies are included in footnote 1 to the financial statements that have been issued. The application of those policies are consistent with those from the prior year. The county did adopt GASB 61 in the current year, and this statement modifies certain requirements for the inclusion of component units. 3 discretely presented component units were identified as a result of the adoption of this standard in the amount of approximately $11.4 million. As it pertains to the accounting standards that the county applies, they are consistent and compliant with requirements, and the consistency and application of those disclosures are similar for governments of your size and complexity. We're also required to communicate whether there are any unusual transactions. There were no unusual transactions during 2012 to report. We also share with the committee significant judgments and estimates that management applies as applying the financial statement reporting. And the county, as you know, makes estimates and assumptions related to those reported assets and liabilities. The most significant estimates included in the county's financial statements are in the areas of reserves for uncollectible property taxes, workers' compensation accrual, and post-employment benefits and other pensions. Audit adjustments. We identified no material adjustments that were recorded by management. In connection with our audit, we did identify one audit difference, which is consistent with prior years. Management provides us with written representation that that audit difference is immaterial, individually and in the aggregate to the financial statements being reported on. Other matters to share with the committee: there were no disagreements with management. We are not aware of any consultations that management had with other accountants. Any significant issues that were discussed as part of the audit were not a condition of our retention. Standard communications and correspondence that we would have with management consists of our annual engagement letter and our year-end representation letter from management. There were no difficulties to report to the committee in conducting our audit. We also report to the committee that we are independent with respect to the county and that we did not perform any services other than the audit services in connection with our roles and responsibilities. And as previously noted, we will confirm these representations in writing once we have completed the single audit. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Loveland, if there are any questions about the audit, please direct them through me to the administration. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have just 3 questions. I was pleased to note this year that we, for the first time, included in the financial statements, as I think they're called, component units, Monroe New Power Corporation, the Civic Center Garage, LDC, and Upstate Telecommunications. But my question, Mr. Chairman, was what changed this year? I mean, I agree that it's best to have them in, but what changed that caused them to be included this year, whereas they had never been included before?
Through the chair, this is Tony Feroci, Controller. With GASB 61, Government Accounting Standards Board issued new guidance on the criteria to determine whether an entity should be considered a discretely presented component unit. We went through that criteria. In the past, we've evaluated the criteria based on prior standards, and each year we've had the auditors confirm our understanding of implementing those standards. So this year was just more in-depth review. GASB 61 issued an exposure draft a couple years ago and opened it up for comments through various counties and other entities for their interpretation, and we felt this was the year to implement. We are actually implementing a year earlier. It is scheduled to must be implemented by year-end 2013, but early adoption was encouraged, so we took this opportunity to review the criteria in depth, and we came to this conclusion with the support of the auditors.
Okay, thank you. Second question, did the auditors issue a management letter?
Through the chair, no management letter was issued.
Okay. Third question, during 2012, very late in the year, as I recall, the county sold something like $21.3 million of tax liens. And of course, on a full accrual basis, always takes a loss on those. In previous years, when the county did this, the details of the transaction were outlined in the audited financial statements and in the CAFR. There was no, at least that I could find, there was no disclosure of that in the 2012 report, and I'm wondering why.
Through the chair, I believe the first year that tax liens were sold were year-end 2007 or 7, and at that time the auditor recommendation was that it be reported as an extraordinary item under accounting standards. That was determined, that was a major event for that first year that we sold the tax liens, and it was over 20 million, 21 million. Since then, it has become a more routine type of transaction where I believe we sold a little in 2011 and also now in 2012. So as it becomes a non-extraordinary item, it is not separated out on the statement of activities portion of the financial statements.
So through the chair, it's basically because it's now considered a routine transaction?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. And since it's not spelled out then, through the chair, I would request that, well, or maybe you know, although I wouldn't be surprised that you don't. Do you know at what the loss was that the county took on the sale of the liens? That is the discount that was taken on the sale of the liens.
Mr. Chairman, if you allow me to round off the numbers, the county sold back in December of 2012 approximately $22 million values of tax liens, and the receipt was approximately $12 million.
So the discount or loss on the sale of the liens was $10 million, is that?
Mr. Chairman, that is essentially correct. On average, it was a little more than 54 cents. I believe it was 54.21 cents on the dollar on average.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, that will conclude our presentation. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Barb. We appreciate your coming tonight. Great presentation. Thank you. Ms. Rossi will now proceed with the rest of the agenda for the Ways and Means Committee. Would you please read the next item?
Referral 13-207.
Moved by Legislator Tucciarello, seconded by Legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, could the representatives of the Sheriff's Office tell us exactly what the money is going to be used for?
Commander Dave Phelps on behalf of the Sheriff's Administration. The money's in both this and the other 20, I'm sorry, right one. TSA K-9, my bad. Through the chair, the TSA K-9 monies are used to fund 3 dogs that were purchased by the TSA. The TSA funds also support all the financial requirements to maintain those animals, as well as a portion of the salaries for the 3 deputies, which are assigned to the K-9.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you. And through the chair, is it required that we have 3 dogs?
The TSA initiated this in 2009 and requested through the ASU, the Airport Authority, that we participate in it, and that was their recommendation.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-208, acceptance.
Moved by Legislator Antelli, seconded by Legislator Hannah. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-209, acceptance.
Moved by Legislator Hannah, seconded by Legislator Howland. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm confused as to how the time periods in 208 and 209 mesh together. Are we processing the grants for 2 consecutive years simultaneously, or? I mean, it looks like they're both for the same, for May of 2013 to August of 2014. Is that correct,
Yes.
that both grants are for the same time period?
Through the chair, yes, sir. Actually, when I first looked at this, I had the same question. This is a regional grant which is supported and initiated by the New York State Department of Homeland Security. And so while we have put in our request, the state took this amount of time to get all of the regions together, and they then submitted their proposal to create the funding. So this is money that we requested, have been approved for, but has not been available until all the regions were caught up. And so we have plans, but none of the money has been spent to this date. So we are anxiously awaiting the funds being available.
So through the chair, 2 years of grant cycle funding are going to be used in the same year going forward?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-210, authorized.
Moved by Legislator Howland, second by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-211,
Moved by
acceptance.
Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-212.
Moved by Legislator Daniele, seconded by Legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney. I defer to the older gentleman first.
Through the chair, could someone give us some brief report on what's been accomplished with this program in the past?
Through the chair, Bob Burns from the Office of Probation. The originally intended term of this grant has actually concluded. We don't have a full report on findings yet, but the initial indications are extremely positive. The primary purpose of the state providing this funding was to reduce detention costs. During 2011, 454 youth were detained at our secure detention facility on Westfall Road. In the very next year after this work was begun, 316 youth were detained in the secure setting. So 454 before the grant and 316 after the grant. We don't have 2013 data yet, and the state wants us to continue, into 2014 to see if this trend continues.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Legislator Barras.
I might wish to disclose I'm employed by RIT.
Thank you. Who cares? Next item, please.
We got to vote on that.
Whoops, I apologize. All those yes, Legislator Andrews.
Thank you. Just following up on Legislator Haney's question then, of the youth then that are not detained, the drop of over 100, what happens to them, or what sort of program is used for them then?
Through the chair, there's a variety of dispositions. Some are released under the supervision of a probation officer. It's called our Alternative to Detention program. Some are diverted from family court action entirely. That's called adjustment or diversion. Others may see their cases resolved in family court, but they're all in the community, in their homes, with their parents and families, with some support from community agencies.
Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-213.
Moved by Legislator Antelli, seconded by Legislator Hannah. Is there any discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Through you, Mr. Chair, is the funding level here for pretrial and ATI the same as it has been in past years?
Through the chair, yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-215.
Moved by Legislator Hannah, seconded by Legislator Howland. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify. I'm sorry, Legislator Andrews. You got to be quick on the draw.
I'll try to keep up with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, the work here that will be done by Tetra Tech, is this not work that could have been done by M3S? Or is there any relationship between M3S and what Tetra Tech will be doing here?
Through the chair, Fred Ryan, Office of Emergency Management. The work that will be done by Tetra Tech is exercise development, which includes planning, organization of the exercise, running meetings, etc. It doesn't have anything to do with the communications equipment itself.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-216.
Moved by Legislator Howland, second by Legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, what is the expected completion date of this construction?
Through the chair, sometime in 2014.
Thank you. Then, through the chair of the administration, am I correct to assume then that if the construction is going to be completed by sometime in 2014, that it will have a significant effect on next year's budget?
Well, through the chair, and actually, normally I should maybe let Bob answer this, but the binding, whatever binding we do have to do, it actually comes in the following year. But we're only in for 5% of this as it is as well. The rest of it is federal and state money.
Yes, but in the referral it talks about how this has no effect on the current year's budget, i.e. this budget. And so my question through the chair was then it must have an effect on some budget, and presumably then either next year or the year after. And I was just trying to get confirmation that was the case.
Mr. Chairman, yes, there is a budget impact, but this is actually part of the capital budget, not the department's operating budget. So that's the explanation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-217.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, seconded by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? The legislator from RIT.
I don't live there.
That isn't what your wife said. Mr. President.
That's true. I said district.
A little levity here. That's.
I had a question regarding the construction cost of $3,565,000. It was originally proposed, or at least the public information meetings occurred in 2009. I just wanted to ask if the construction costs have been updated since then through the chair to the administration.
Through the chair, yes. These, the construction cost estimate that you see there is based on current prices that we're seeing.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-218.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-221.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Rantelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-222.
Moved by legislator Rantelli, seconded by legislator Hanna. This item was amended in the lead committee, so nothing more has to be done with it here. It's been corrected. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Could, Mr. Chairman, what was the substance of the amendment?
Jerry, could you speak to that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the amendment was to correct a typographical error. The body of the referral has the correct term for the grant. Unfortunately, in specific legislative item number 3, it had the wrong dates, the wrong years, and so it was amended to reflect the correct years.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-223.
Moved by legislator Hanna, seconded by legislator Howland. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-225.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Quattro. Is there any discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, the second to last paragraph of the referral refers to Capital Fund 1508 and then states, and any capital funds created for the same intended purpose. My question is through the chair, are there any other capital funds already created for the same intended purpose or not?
Mr. Chairman, that is, for lack of a better phrase, standard language that we put in there. The complete intent is to charge Capital Fund 1508, but it's just in there to catch us in case.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-226.
Moved by legislator Quattro, seconded by legislator Daniele. Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, which parts of the Civic Center complex will be reviewed for the energy conservation improvements?
Through the chair, there are a number of different systems. I guess it's fair to say, generally speaking, the county-owned portions of the Civic Center complex, which include but are not limited to the main chilled water plant in the southwest corner of the complex. It's actually below grade. That also includes the incoming electrical service, 5 different substations which are in rooms on the lower level that surround the perimeter of the complex. Again, domestic water pumping systems, river water pumping systems, mechanical systems that are distributed throughout the complex in the county-owned portions of that facility.
Thank you. Through the chair, then, so nothing will occur in the garage, is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. And through the chair, could you just explain how the $1.1 million of estimated savings is arrived at? Annual.
Through the chair, the actual vendor performs a detailed energy audit, and then based on the projected energy savings, which are based on a baseline of current energy consumption as compared to the projected energy consumption with the new energy performance measures in place, there's a litany of calculations that basically then forecast and estimate ultimately what we'll save over the life or the period of the payback.
Thank you. And so when does this 15-year period start through the chair.
Through the chair, that would begin at the completion of the project.
Thank you. And through the chair, when do you anticipate the project to be completed?
Through the chair, we expect with legislative approval to initiate the project, the construction phase of the project formally, if you will, this fall. And we expect the project to be completed by year-end 2014.
Thank you. And through the chair, would there have been any way to incorporate a review of the garage into this, even though it isn't county-owned?
Through the chair, not to my knowledge.
Thank you. And then my last question is, I think this is maybe the third or fourth of these energy audits we've done this year. Are there other buildings or complexes that you anticipate performing similar energy audits on in the upcoming months?
Through the chair, we are currently requesting proposals for a county-wide lighting program, which is not altogether different than one previously approved by this body last year for Van Laer, specifically the Frankie Van Laer and Northwest Quadrant treatment plants. This next proposal will branch us out and take a wider look, if you will, at a variety of county-owned facilities. So that is forthcoming, yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, just so I understand this, the John W. Danforth Company is guaranteeing annual energy savings. At what point are they guaranteeing to what amount? I realize that you have a projected savings here, but through this contract, they're guaranteeing a savings. What is it? What do they have to? What do those savings have to be for them to be fulfilling their end of the guarantee? What percentage of the estimate? Is there a percentage of the estimate?
Right. I think she'd like to know if there's a set amount annually, and there is. There's projected. But they'll do a measurement verification annually. They'll do an annual report. Through the chair, the vendor will actually do a measurement and verification, and will receive that report annually. And I believe they're obligated ultimately to meet the savings over the 15-year period of the pro forma. So as was referenced in a prior EPW committee meeting, on past energy performance contracts, we do actually receive those annual reports, those measurement and verification reports that have the financial statements in them, and we will do the same with this contract.
All right, thank you. And through the chair, then the understanding is that all the equipment that's being installed or retrofitted, especially the lighting, I'm somewhat familiar with that. The expectation is that the average new ballast will have a 15-year life expectancy?
Yes, that's correct. There's, in addition to the projected annual savings and the ultimate total 15-year savings, that does factor into, or take into account rather, that all of the equipment installations as part of the overall energy performance contract, the 15 years is well within the life expectancy of all the equipment.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Legislator Baroth.
Thank you. Through the chair of the administration, the referral mentions that there's going to be reimbursements from NYSERDA. What is the level of reimbursement that we expect from NYSERDA?
Through the chair, we expect upwards of $493,000.
In total?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-227.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-229.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Antalya. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-232.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hanna. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-233, authorize an agreement.
Moved by legislator Hannah, seconded by legislator Howland. Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment that this is really sort of an auspicious or historic moment for we're bringing to the close what was a unique joint undertaking between the County of Monroe and the City of Rochester that achieved significant accomplishments in what we now call the East End. It's probably long forgotten by most, but the environment in which this came about was one in which the university very much wanted to remove the Eastman School of Music from downtown and move it to the River Campus. Bob Freeman, who was then the director of the Eastman School of Music, quite frankly, had his heart set on doing that. And the driving force was, I guess, what we might call some environmental issues that existed at that time in the area of the Eastman Theater. And in a remarkable joint undertaking, the city and the county came together and a plan was put together and accomplished a great deal in that area. The unfortunate environmental issues were removed from the area, and the university not only withdrew its desire, but has made significant additional investments in the Eastman School of Music, the addition to the Eastman Theater, etc. So that this really was a remarkable undertaking by the city and the county. And it's most interesting that we now see the end of that undertaking. And if people want to see the benefits of joint governmental work, I would suggest they go up to East Main Street and look around.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item, please.
Referral 13-234.
Moved by legislator Howland, seconded by legislator Quattro. Now, it's my understanding that the Minority Caucus has not had a full explanation of this particular referral, and I believe we need to go into executive session to do so. So, Legislator Tucciarello?
Mr. Chairman, if you indicate that you have questions, I'd be happy to move us to executive session.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Howland. Any discussion? Yes, you'd like to have discussion? We are in executive session, ladies and gentlemen.
You have to vote.
Oh, I have to vote on, excuse me. Good thing I got her here. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. case? Okay, yes, I am. Is everybody back? As to item 13-0234, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before this committee? Yes, Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably on me, but I was expecting the auditors to visit us in August. And so I would just request to you, would it be possible each year for us to get notice a week or so before the meeting that they're going to show up at?
The president is nodding his head. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further business?
I do have one other question. Through you, Mr. President, it was reported that the county has retained Mr. Dennis Vacco to review some services provided by LDCs, and my question through you is, what is the amount of that contract for?
And that's I believe that's out of order because it has nothing to do with the legislature. It's an administrative deal, so I'm going to rule that out of order.
It's a financial question. That's why I'm asking.
I'm going to rule it out of order. Any further discussion? The Ways and Means meeting is adjourned, and I got to get the right date here.
August 21st.
The next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will be August 21st, 2013. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.